Good afternoon, expats. Welcome to the channel. If you've never been here before, if you've been here before, welcome back as always. I am Jay, the American expat, or that idiot as many people prefer to call me. And as you can see, if you've been watching this for a while, I am back in the house in Jiangsu, where I will be spending a little bit of time off and on over the next few weeks as we really start to wind things down on our way back out of China. I'm continuing to see a lot of things happen in the United States, which worry me. A couple videos back, I asked what you guys think about the whole move situation and what I can expect when I get back. I also brought up some bits about the Cultural Revolution and what that means. I figured I might compare the two, the historical Cultural Revolution from China with what is happening in the United States today. And so stick around. So in order for you to understand the Cultural Revolution and how it relates to everything that is happening today within the United States, I have to give a little bit of background. Before the Cultural Revolution happened, of course, China had its Communist Revolution. Don't confuse the two. That would be when the People's Republic was founded in 1949. And shortly thereafter, Mao Zedong, yes, the great chairman, he began implementing some socialist policies designed to try and help China move into the modern age. And of course, what I'm referring to is called the Great Leap Forward, which turned out to be a great leap off of a cliff. The policies led to mass starvation. We don't even know how many people starved to death and died. I think I've mentioned it a little bit here and there. Grandma and Grandpa, my Chinese grandma and grandpa that live in the countryside, they lived through the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution, of course. And much of their family died as a result of those policies. It was a very terrifying time. Rural farmers were taken off of their fields and forced to work in factories, I guess with the idea that they would make steel and that sort of thing. They had some policies to get rid of what they considered to be pests at the time, which, sparrows and birds and that sort of thing that they assumed were eating grain. So they basically killed off a bunch of birds, which then were not there to eat the grasshoppers, which then devoured all of the crops, further aggravating the problems of starvation because there were no farmers farming the land. And, again, millions of people died. And as a result, Mao was forced to admit that he had made a mistake. It's a really big mistake. He was supposed to retire and, kind of fade away. And people like Deng Xiaoping kind of took the reins of the government and started implementing more, how shall we say, capitalist policies that led to a sudden recovery within the Chinese economy, which had been wrecked by Mao's policies. And they began to recover. But Mao, being the man that Mao was, he didn't like having the attention taken away from him, and so he began to plot, and he put together this thing, it morphed into this thing, the Cultural Revolution. He basically got a bunch of young people riled up where they were worshiping him and everything that he did and everything that he said, and they went crazy, going around the country, denouncing their teachers, parents, anyone in authority, destroying cultural artifacts, anything that they considered to be old or, old culture, old language, old thinking. It was a terrifying time. And it all started with that. Just one person not wanting to give up their power and basically turning the youth loose on the country. And of course, it lasted 10 years. 10 years of horror as these people rampaged across the country, destroying monuments and buildings and language and history and culture. And it is much the reason, I guess you could attribute much of what China, or the lack of Chinese culture within the mainland to that time, because a lot of it was destroyed. And it's my own personal opinion, but I feel like the people here today have lost touch with their ancient past, their culture. And that maybe you consider that to be a good thing, maybe not, but I think that it's directly related to what happened in the Cultural Revolution. So there's some background for you before we really get into this. So before I go any further about this Cultural Revolution, I need to get something to eat. I'm starved. Nothing really strange this time as far as food goes. It is Chinese food, but if anyone recalls the last time I think that I showed myself eating Chinese food was some kind of soup with like organ meat and stuff in it, intestines and kidneys and liver and congealed blood, that sort of thing. This is just a cold noodle dish. It's got some vinegar and some vegetables. Just a really cheap Chinese street food type thing. I enjoy eating it sometimes. Depending on the one you get, sometimes it can be very spicy. I don't think this one is really a spicy one. Sorry, you got to mix up all the stuff inside. Otherwise, it won't have much in the way of flavor. But let's see how good this place does with their. Yeah, it's okay. It doesn't have as much of the sour taste, but not bad. So the Cultural Revolution. Yes, I'm hearing all kinds of things in the United States about the Cultural Revolution. And in fact, I'm seeing a lot of people tearing down statues, monuments, and trying to throw out the old history of the United States. So it very much is like the Cultural Revolution. The only thing it's lacking is a central leader. Which is really a strange thing now that I think about it. There's a lot of large companies and corporate entities. I guess they are, it's such a strange thing. There are a lot of political leaders that are kind of going along with this thing, and I'm trying to figure out what they're revolting against, because, if they really are communists and Marxists, it seems very strange to me that large corporations are helping them out. So I don't know. It's just a really strange thing. Well, as far as lamb pie is concerned, probably not the best I've had. Luckily, I have this amazing drink to help me wash down the horrible taste. Ah, yes. That's the good stuff. Just like back home. What do they call this stuff anyway? I've forgotten. There's just Chinese writing on it. I can't remember what this flavor was called back in the US. I remember my favorite was always the pipeline punch, but, that's not available in China. Anyway, back to this Cultural Revolution stuff. How is it that this has happened, that I make videos complaining about communism and the craziness of everything here in China, and suddenly I find myself faced with the very same things back home. I can tell you from Grandma and Grandpa's experience, having lived through the Cultural Revolution, that this is not a good thing. And I'm hearing from a lot of the people that have been involved, especially with, and this isn't anything against Bernie Sanders, I'm assuming, I haven't really been involved with politics in a long time, but I have to assume that most of the people that were in favor of Bernie Sanders were normal people, but it sounds like some of his staffers were, communist revolutionaries, I guess. They're calling for people to be rounded up and put into re-education camps. This is something more of a Stalinist sort of thing. The Chinese did this as well. during the Cultural Revolution, some people that were lucky not to be killed were, I guess if they were someone who was in power or had some, influence, instead they were sent off to the countryside to be re-educated, to learn the ways of being a peasant. Deng Xiaoping is a good example of that. I know he's praised in modern Chinese politics for opening China up, and which has led to their great success up until recently. But at one point he was purged during the Cultural Revolution because of some things he said, and because of Mao's personal slights from feeling that Deng Xiaoping had, I guess, not given him enough, what would you call it? Not enough face. So Deng Xiaoping was sent off to work in a factory and to clean floors in a factory. So, yeah, that happened to a lot of people. But we're already seeing such violence, and I don't know. It's not something good. You don't want a cultural revolution. You don't want, believe me, you don't want communism. I don't know why anybody, if they really knew what they were getting themselves into, why they would want communism. And I know I've heard that a lot in some of the things that I've been listening to, but believe me, you don't want this stuff. It's not good. It really isn't good. Especially, there's not like some magical threshold where suddenly communism becomes good. It never reaches that point because for a number of reasons that I'm not going to get into, but just trust me as someone who's living in a communist country and has spoken to people that went through the revolutions and the different programs of that communist country. It's not good. Things in China didn't get good until they opened their economy up to capitalism. And that's when things got good. Before that, it was all bad. So keep that in mind as you're watching this stuff going down. Maybe it's time for people to stop being silent about what they're seeing. When you see people trying to tear down statues of Abraham Lincoln and George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, go back and, sure, the people were flawed, but go back and look at the ideas that they put together and they put to paper that allowed the United States to reach the point that it's at now, and that continues to allow the country to evolve and to become better. Why on earth would we be tearing that down? And let's say there is some statue or something that commemorates something that is an ugly part of our past. Well, we need to remember that happened. If there's a statue to someone that was a slave owner, you don't tear it down. Instead, you need to put something there that puts it into context so that people that look at the statue that say, who is this guy? They can look, and then maybe there's a plaque there that says, this is from a time when this sort of thing was going on before a lot of changes took place. It's important for people to know about that, that it happened, that people went through those kinds of things, and why it's important that we've reached the point that we're at now, and all the sacrifices that had to be made in order to reach that point, and most of them not willing sacrifices. But, to tear down the monuments and the statues and to destroy history, it really just destroys those people's sacrifices and everything that they went through. Boy, it's starting to sound like Star Wars in here. You would destroy all for which... Anyway, I'm not going to get into that, but I don't even know what to think when I see this stuff. I guess hopefully it calms down and people come to their senses. I would assume that most of the people in the United States are still not in favor of Marxist revolution and all of this stuff. Of course, again, I've been gone for so long that, every time I go back, I'm shocked to see how things have changed. Maybe it's just that I've been away so long that things have changed to that degree that now people are somehow in favor of communism in the United States, which has been the polar opposite ever since I can remember. Well, it's getting late. The lights are starting to come on the buildings, and I should probably get this video wrapped up. I don't know if I got to talk about everything I wanted to say, but I just want to finish with this. Here in China, they came for the schools. They came for art, music, film. They even came for the people in government. And that's the same sort of thing that I'm seeing happen in the United States. And as much as I'd like to say, hey, I see it happening, but there's no way it could really happen, a lot of things have happened this year that I never thought would happen. So I think that I do feel a little worried about it. What these people could do and the damage that they are causing within the country. And I think it's about time that regular people started voicing their opinions. I'm not saying to do anything violent. Of course, don't do anything violent. But, I think of people like Martin Luther King or Gandhi or some of these others that stood up to this sort of thing, oppression or people attacking their culture. And without violence, they were able to defeat them. And I think it's about time for those of us who disagree with these people to probably stand up and make a stand, not violently, but and we may end up getting hit over the head, or who knows what can happen, but somebody's got to do it. Obviously, I'm not in the United States at the moment. The best I can do is to voice my opinion in a silly video that no one will ever see, but I think it's about time for the rest of us, the regular people, assuming that I'm right and there are actually people like myself left inside the United States. It's time for us to stand up and stand up for what we believe in. And we don't believe in racism. We don't believe in oppression. We believe in freedom, and we believe in the right of everyone to live the way that they see fit, especially when it doesn't interfere with someone else's rights.